employees have Section 7 rights. Sometimes you see the employees say, well, I want to protect them. I want to walk around with a video recorder, or I want to tape record every conversation I have with my supervisor, because he might say or she might say something that makes me uncomfortable and I want proof. Can employees do that? Rob, help us with knowing when employees can video or audio record and what employers can do to restrict that.
Sure, absolutely. And this really falls into almost a two-part question, right? You have policies and potential union issues, as Cliff has discussed before, and then you have the law. I'd like to focus on the latter for now because there have been some developments, although they're not really clarifying developments. So, when we talk about the ability to record conversations, right? What we typically are focusing on is what's called Michigan's wiretapping statute, right? Which basically says that someone it's illegal both from criminal side as well as the civil side to record a conversation or to eavesdrop on a conversation. Now, Michigan has historically been what we call a one-party state, which is as long as you're a participant to that conversation, you have every right to record it, right? It's one of the reasons why we've always recommended that when people are installing security cameras, don't have audio, right? Because you could very easily capture a conversation that you're not a part of. Now you just potentially open yourself up for liability on the wiretapping statute, right? But what we've seen is a little bit of uncertainty and unfortunately a reluctance to clarify the interpretations under these wiretapping statute. And this actually arose in a case, the ATF, the government entity versus Project Veritas, which, is one of those companies that sends in undercover people to record, certain events. And long and short, Project Veritas had an intern, that was hired by the ATF. There's some allegations as to whether or not they fraudulently induced the ATF. We can set those aside for the purpose of this conversation. But the federal court, when interpreting the Michigan statute, actually came to the complete opposite conclusion as to what we typically see, right, from 50 years of precedence within the Michigan state courts, and said that under the actual interpretation of the statute, that it's a two-party state. You needed to have both sides consent to the conversation. Okay. And this was obviously a pretty major development that happened in 2020, late 2021. The court actually wound up trying to get the Michigan Supreme Court to clarify through this process called certifying a question, and the Michigan Supreme Court declined to answer whether or not Michigan is a one-party or a two-party state. And ironically, after the Michigan Supreme Court said, hey, we're not going to decide this, the original court in ATF versus Project Veritas, on a motion for reconsideration, decided to come to the complete opposite conclusion and say, again, now we are a one-party state. So there is a lot of movement on this issue as to whether or not we are a one-party state or a two-party state. There's been some subsequent developments. There was a case called Fisher versus Perrin in late 2022, early 2023, where the federal court that originally decided the ATF case again stated we are a one-party state, right? So there tends to be a little bit of a push as to confirming that we are a one-party state within Michigan. But again, the Supreme Court has not come down to actually clarify that. So we can expect continued arguments to be made, and maybe they'll get some traction, maybe they won't get some traction, right? So, the takeaway, in our limited time here is Michigan is, for the most part, still a one-party state. Can arguments be made that everyone needs to consent to the recording? Absolutely. Right? Can we, give any particularized guidance? Unfortunately, without the Supreme Court giving us 100% certainty, all we can say is most likely, and historically courts have held, that we are still a one-party state, even though there are a few, aberrant decisions that does require the two-party consent. And Cliff, you I'm sure have some comments as to, whether or not refusing to allow someone to be recorded is going to be a union issue. And certainly employers can enact policies that say that no video recording is allowed, and there's 100% legitimate business reasons for many of these policies, right? Confidentiality reasons, making sure that technology or no espionage is happening. So again, it really is a multifaceted question, but the state of the law right now is it's a one-party state. That's the best advice that we can say based on the current state of the law and the Supreme Court's refusal to give us 100% certainty on that issue.
Okay, thanks, Rob. And I think the takeaway there is that in Michigan, at least as the law currently exists, we're a one-party state, meaning somebody can walk in with a cell phone, tape recorder, whatever, in their pocket. Nobody knows. Record a conversation, and it's not illegal.
Yeah, recorded
The question
conversation
is,
they're a part of.
right. And so
Yeah,
the question becomes, can employers stop it?
mhm,
That would be through policy. That raises the whole issue of what will chill Section 7 rights. So
correct.
again, we need to look at the policy. You need to talk to legal counsel before you either implement or enforce any such policy. Time will tell where that goes.